Long ball is going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Metcalf will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow.
It is Baker Mayfield.
I woke up feeling dangerous.
Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to a brand new episode of the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, I got my co-host, Jack Curry, riding with me. How you doing tonight, Jack?
Doing well. Excited for our listeners to listen to this episode because it was a damn sure good one.
Yes, it was. You know, we had Mark Schofield on during this episode. He came in to break down the Browns and Patriots this Sunday. You know, Mark has joined us before. The last time was when we were previewing the quarterbacks in the NFL draft, and Baker Mayfield was his number 2 quarterback. And, you know, he had a lot of good things to say about him during that episode and also during this episode as well. But we broke down the Browns and Patriots game coming up on Sunday. But we wanted to kick this podcast off with I don't know if it's an announcement anymore, but if you have been paying attention to Jack's social media, my social media, we have launched a brand new website called The Dogland, and it's an opportunity for me and Jack to really show our passion for writing, our passion for the Browns. And Jack, I know this has been a lot of work, but I'm really glad that we are finally able to have this website up and running and are able to write about the Browns, something we both love to do.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I previously had a website. I previously wrote with you at Forever Rebuilding, and then I stopped writing for my own site, was writing for Big Play for a while. If you're on social media, you know how that ended. So I hadn't been writing for a month, but we've been in the process of this for months. We've been talking about it and setting it up, and so far it's been good. You know, we appreciate everybody that's been reading our work so far, and we're definitely going to be pumping out some great content week in and week out during the season, during the off season, leading up to the draft. Obviously, you know, Anthony didn't say it, but Stephen Thomas is working with us as well. Posting his daily mock drafts on there. So we are going to try to provide you guys with great content. You know, we know that there's a ton of Browns resources out there and tons of people writing, but we hope to give you our own little twist on it, as well as provide, you know, news and insight on anything that's going on with the Browns. So really excited to be working with Anthony on this.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in our introduction article, you know, we're not here to compete with anybody. We're not here to take the place of anybody. What Jack and I want to do is just provide quality content, and if you choose to read our content, we absolutely appreciate it. You know, there's no ads on our website. We're not looking to make money off of this. Jack and I just love to write about the Browns, talk about the Browns, hence why we do the podcast as well. And this is just another great opportunity to give us an extension off of the podcast on a different medium, to give our listeners a chance to read the stuff we like to write about. So we appreciate anybody that has read our website so far, visited our website. We appreciate it. You can find our website by going to www.thedogland.com, or to make it real easy, if you just type in dog.land in your URL in your browser, the website will pop up as well. So me and Jack are thrilled to have this opportunity and look forward to providing quality content like I mentioned, and you know, just being able to share our passion for writing. We absolutely appreciate it. like I mentioned earlier, we have Mark Schofield on with us with the podcast, so we're not going to waste any more time. Here is Mark. All right, Browns fans, we are very pleased to be joined right now by Mark Schofield. He is a writer for the Pat's Pulpit. He is also the host of the Scho podcast. We had Mark on about a year ago. I think it's way too long to talk to Mark. Mark, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Anthony, Jack. It's great to be back with you guys. Always fun coming on. Now we get an actual game to talk about. When I was on you guys last, it was all quarterback stuff. Now we get a game to look forward to. So excited to be with you and start breaking down this game.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you were on with us pre-draft, talking about Rosen and Baker and who would fit the Browns best. Ultimately, we decided on Baker. I think things went kind of well last season with him. Not so much this season so far, but hopefully, and I'm saying this with prayer quotes, but hopefully he can get things back on track against New England. I know that's a very tough task to do, but that's why we have Mark in here with us. He's going to come in here, break down this game, and break down the defense and some of the other things that New England's got going on. And one of the biggest things that they've done within the last 48 hours is they added wide receiver Mohamed Sanu from the Atlanta Falcons. They traded a second-round pick for him. Mark, it just seems like the rich get richer adding Mohamed Sanu to an offense that has already performed very well this season, especially when the defense has been so elite. But adding Sanu to this offense, like I said, the rich just get richer.
Yeah, it's a big acquisition for them. I think if you look at this New England offense right now, and in many ways it's sort of emblematic of how they've approached, their sort of both offensive and defensive and basically their overall philosophy over the Brady Belichick era. They're still trying to find out their true offensive identity. I think that we know what they are defensively, but offensively it's still sort of a work in progress. I think coming into this year, they expected to be the team they were at the end of last year, which was a 21 personnel team, sort of a power running game at times behind James Devlin with Sony Michel, doing some stuff off of play action, based off of that power run game. Obviously you think about the divisional game against the Chargers, for example. But things have kind of turned a different direction. With the loss of Rob Gronkowski now, maybe they're not as comfortable with the 21 personnel stuff. With the loss of both Devlin and then his backup, Jakob Johnson, the international player, Sony Michel hasn't been as effective in that power and gap run game. And so they're trying to move to perhaps more of a 11 or even a 10 personnel team. We've seen them use some 10 personnel with 4 wide receivers. And the problem with that is they've been banged up in the wide receiver room. Julian Edelman dealing with a chest injury. Philip Dorsett was in and out of the lineup. He came back this week. He had a hamstring injury. You have the Josh Gordon news. He had been banged up with foot and ankle injuries, and now he's going on IR. And so they needed to make an acquisition. They were inquiring about Emmanuel Sanders, but they've had their eye on Mohamed Sanu for a while. They've tried to trade for him before in years past. He's a player that, he has that sort of Rutgers and Schiano connection. Bill Belichick, obviously, it's become a joke in New England, but anytime there's a Rutgers player available, he's going to go and get him. He's got 2 in the secondary alone with the McCourty twins. And so it's an acquisition I think they wanted to make for a while. But given the way that this offense has sort of unfolded over the first couple of weeks of the season, and given the injuries that they've had to deal with at the wide receiver spot, it's a move that makes sense for them. I mean, they were down to two undrafted rookie free agents, Gunnar Olszewski and Jacoby Myers, getting serious playing time for them at the wide receiver spot. And so, they needed to make a move. So, like you said, the rich get richer. You might look at it as, perhaps you're overpaying a second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu. But they went into that trade with 13 draft picks potentially at their disposal. When you factor in the comp picks they expect to get from guys like Malcolm Brown and Trent Brown and Trey Flowers. And so they could part with one of them, and they could always get back into the second round with some of those other 12 picks they have left. So it's a move they needed to make. I know they're excited about getting Sanu into the fold, and we'll see what the offense looks like going forward.
And obviously with the addition of Mohamed Sanu, a couple hours ago, as of this recording, it was announced that Josh Gordon getting placed on injured reserve, and it sounds like that the Patriots are going to move on. First of all, talk about the injury, and then second, why are they moving on from him now at this point?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to sort of think about in terms of why they'd move on from him at this point, Jack. I think the injury, we saw it sort of really sort of get exacerbated at the end of that game against the Giants. There was a Brady interception. I guess it was earlier in the game. Oh, no, it was the Brady strip sack fumble when he tried to chase it down from behind and, tried to make the tackle, got twisted badly and re-injured, a knee injury that had been lingering, a sort of tweaked knee. And I think at this point, with this new acquisition, with the impending return of N'Keal Harry, their first-round draft choice, they realized that if, Gordon's cleared to go but still isn't 100%, that it's probably a situation where they could put him on injury reserve, and then when he comes off of IR, waive him, and that gives him sort of an opportunity, where they could sort of he could find a better situation for him, rather than trying to trade him or something like that. And so, I certainly hope that the situation works out for Josh Gordon, because whenever you have an event like this, a sort of change in his playing status, maybe a change of scenery, change of team, you start to wonder about all the inner demons that he's dealt with. It seemed like he had established himself in the New England area, and that the team, and obviously the fan base, the organization from top to bottom was, working with him to try to find that balance between, what he's had to deal with and things that he needs to do to take care of himself off the field and finding a home for him in this organization. And so we all sort of wish the best for Josh Gordon going forward. He can still play. He's not the guy he used to be. He's bigger. He's a more physical wide receiver now. He wins more, I'd say, with strength after the catch rather than pure speed. So he's not the player that he once was, but he can still be a valuable asset to teams that are looking for a boundary-type receiver, a physical-type receiver that can give you something after the catch. And I'm sure he'll find an opportunity, when he's cleared to return. But I think New England, with the acquisition of Sanu and the impending return of N'Keal Harry, felt, this was a time where, yes, we've got some instability in the wide receiver room, but when we get those guys back, plus Dorsett, plus Edelman, plus the growth of Jacoby Myers, we'll have a solid core going forward.
So right now the Patriots are sitting at 7-0 with the Browns coming into town this weekend, and one of the major reasons that they're 7-0 is their defense. I saw a fantastic statistic that if the Patriots offense did not take the field at all this season, the Patriots would still be 3-1 based on the scoring from their defense and the scoring for their special teams. Mark, what has made this defense so dominant this season?
Yeah, it brings us back to a debate that sort of played out on the football Twitter timeline over the summer. And, when all of us, idiots that spend all our free time, and actually all of our time, thinking about this game, writing about this game, talking about this game. When it gets into the summer, we find and invent things to talk about. And, one of the debates that played out on Twitter over the summer was what matters more? Is it pass rush or pass coverage? And in the midst of that debate, I actually waded in. I typically shy away from those, but I jumped into this one. I'll avoid the running backs don't matter one at all costs, but I jumped into this one, and I did it by pulling out a quote from Bill Belichick from, I think it was 2014, talking about Chandler Jones. He had asked a question during a press conference about, Chandler Jones and what he's meant to the team. And he went into this. It's a perfect Belichick example of, you ask a football question, you're going to get a football answer. He goes into this long spiel about how the pass rush and the coverage in the secondary have to work together in tandem, because if you have a great pass rush but guys are open, it doesn't matter. Quarterback's got to find somewhere to go with the football. If you have a great coverage in the secondary but no pass rush at all, players are going to break down. The quarterback's going to create something with his legs or in a scramble drill situation, because you can't cover guys 7, 8, 10 seconds into a play. And so they have to work together. And that's kind of been the strength of this defense right now. They have such trust in their secondary. From guys like Stephon Gilmore and Jonathan Jones to Jason McCourty to Devin McCourty to J.C. Jackson, that they can play cover one, they can play cover zero. They have no fear playing straight man coverage. We saw a lot of those zero pressure looks against the Jets on Monday night. So they'll go cover one, cover zero in the secondary, and it frees them up to do some things up front to generate pressure. We saw a lot with that zero pressure schemes against Sam Darnold. they would show him zero blitz. They'd start to harass him a little bit, get some pressure on him, start speeding up that internal clock, and then show him some different looks off of it where they'll show you that zero blitz but then drop, or show you an overload zero blitz look like they did one time with looked like simulated pressure on the left side. They drop, but they've been pressured from the right. He slid the protection to the left, and now he's got free rushers on the right side that he hasn't accounted for. And so it's the symbiotic nature of their secondary and their pass rush, which is so important. And the other thing for this defense is, particularly in the secondary, although it's true of all three levels of their defense, they're so deep on all three levels of the defense. And in the secondary in particular, it allows them to sort of play matchup-based coverage schemes at the secondary where, say this week, for example, and if you're looking at how you're going to defend Odell and Landry and the rest of this Browns offense, well, you can look at the skill sets of the receivers and sort of match up the coverage based on those guys. So say you're worried about Jarvis Landry, sort of a quick change of direction type guy, you might take a Jonathan Jones or even a Jason McCourty and put him on Jarvis Landry, because that's kind of the skill set that works there. Odell is probably going to see a lot of Stephon Gilmore. And you can sort of go down through lineups and they can match up the skills of their coverage guys against, the traits of the wide receivers they're going to go against. And it allows them to get the matchups they want. Then they play man coverage and they can get pressure on the quarterback. So you put all those things together. That's why you see that stat you outlined. That's why you see the fact that, the quarterbacks they've gone up against so far, maybe they're not great, but 1 touchdown pass and 18 interceptions. It doesn't matter who you're going against. Those are pretty impressive numbers. And so putting that all together, that's how they've been so effective this year. And it's taken a ton of pressure off their offense because the offense has been good at times. It's struggled at times, but it hasn't really hurt them because this defense is so good right now.
We're reaching approximately 150 episodes of this podcast, and I would say for every single one of those, at some point on that episode, I have mentioned how important complementary football is, and you just broke it down completely. Now, I lean more so of the offense helping out the defense, helping out the special teams, and vice versa. But you outlined the pass rush, helping out the pass coverage, helping out the run defense, etc. So football is all about being complementary to each other, having the correct pieces to play off of each other, and you just outlined it perfectly and kind of, I won't say prove my point, but reinforced the point that I've been trying to make over 150 episodes or so.
Right. Well, I mean, 99% of what I regurgitate, it's coming from Bill Belichick. And, when you sort of cover the New England Patriots for as long as I have now, and even before that, just being a fan of this team, you see the way he handles organizational growth and development. You see the way he handles roster construction. You see the way, he preaches all three phases. I mean, in the stat that you cited, you have to include the special team scores because they've blocked some punts. They've returned some blocked punts for touchdowns, and they've had some big contributions on special teams because it all sort of works together. And, even just within one unit, like we broke down with the defense, or when you want to talk about the offense and how, you need to have the ability to show a defense different looks, the ability to show a defense different ways of doing the same thing, the ability to sort of get into one formation but still keep the defense guessing whether you're going to run, whether you're going to pass, the ability to have zone blocking schemes look the same, whether it's a zone, outside zone run, or a PA boot action play where you're not giving away keys to the defense. And so you're so right that there's such a complementary nature to the sport. And it's off the field too, roster construction and salary cap stuff. So all that stuff goes into being a successful organization. And it's what made the Patriots, it's what's made them so successful over the past 2 decades.
One of the Patriots' biggest weapons on defense has been Jamie Collins. Now, Collins came back to the Patriots after a couple seasons with the Browns. If anybody listens to the show knows, I was not a big fan of Jamie Collins here. I thought he was lazy. I thought he got his contract and just decided to not be a big factor, even though his stats say otherwise. But now he's back in New England. Now he is balling. He's made play after play. Mark, is it just a simple fact of Bill Belichick knows how to utilize Collins perfectly, or he's just more comfortable in that New England system?
I think there's certainly an aspect to Belichick finding a way to use players. I mean, whenever I talk about Belichick and how this organization approaches pro scouting and free agency, the example I use is Kyle Van Noy, who struggled in Detroit, but has sort of found a home in New England where he's used more as a will-type linebacker who can just flow to the football, be athletic, and make plays. And as an example of the Patriots they ask the right question in terms of evaluation of talent. It's not what can't he do, it's what can he do. And you highlight the things the guy can do, and you find a way to make that work in your system. Or if it doesn't fit in your system or there's no need for those skills, then you don't need to go out and get that guy. And this is another example of that. And so I think there is an aspect of Bill Belichick putting them in the right role. But at the same time, Jack, you were right in your analysis of him with respect to Collins being lazy, sometimes freelancing at times, not really playing within a system. That's what sort of got him run out of town here in New England the first go-round. It was he wouldn't stick to the script. He wouldn't stay on structure. He would freelance at times. And Bill Belichick's defense is supposed to work with all 11 guys pulling in the same direction. And if you're not, there's going to be ways to exploit you as a defense. And so it didn't work the first go round. But in this, return engagement, he's been much more disciplined. You're seeing him doing things like setting the edge. I don't remember seeing Jamie Collins doing that back when he was here the first time. But now, he'll set the edge and bounce, force plays back to the inside, knowing he's not going to get a tackle or anything like that. But Dante Hightower will, or Juwan Bentley will, or Landon Roberts will. And so you're seeing him do things like that. You're seeing him, one of the big plays, the other night was, a pressure look where he brings pressure. They cover him. They block him, the Jets do, but John Simon's free. He doesn't get a sack. He doesn't get any numbers on that play, but the Patriots force a fumble and a turnover. And so he's sort of bought into what they're doing defensively. He's not freelancing as much as I've used to see from him, and certainly not as much as I'm watching him on tape right now. I'm not seeing any evidence of him doing that. And so as long as that continues, he's going to keep making plays with his defense, I think. But I don't think that discounts your initial evaluation. I think you were exactly spot on. It's just, back in this defense with the talent around him, maybe it's the fact that he feels like he doesn't need to do that. There's so much talent around him. He doesn't have to freelance for the defense to be good. He can just rely on the guys around him to be good as well.
The most consistent thing about the Patriots over the last 2 decades has been Bill Belichick, but obviously it's been Tom Brady as well. Here he is in year 20, still playing at an elite level. You saw Adam Schefter talk about a potential exit strategy after the season for the Patriots, but I'm not buying anything like that. This could be a novel the size of War and Peace asking this question, but what makes Tom so good, and why year after year, and now we're in year 20, is he still able to perform the way that he does?
Like you said, I could probably go on for about an hour to try to answer that question, but I think the easiest way to sort of distill it, and it's part of what I see in Baker Mayfield at times, it's the fact that in his mind he has always picked 199. Even in year 20 with 6 Super Bowl rings, and his place in the Hall of Fame solidified, perhaps his place on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks is solidified. He still goes out every single day to prove to Bill Belichick, to Robert Kraft, to everybody in that locker room that he is the best quarterback for this team. And it was, again, reiterated this offseason when, they sort of redid his deal. And he was open with the media. He was honest. He said, look, we are headed into uncharted territory. I'm 42. Not a lot of guys my age are still playing at this level. And we don't know what it's going to look like a year from now or anything like, 2 years from now, 2 months from now. But at the same time, I'm going to do what I keep doing, which is just going out every single day to prove to everybody here that I'm the best quarterback for this team. And this is a guy, again, you can go through the accolades, but he still approaches every single game, every single practice, every single throw, every single day, feeling like he has to prove his worth to this organization. And so it's that sort of competitive toughness that makes him the player who he is. Now, there are things that he does on the field, sure, that help him remain Tom Brady and help him remain elite, from the pocket awareness to the pocket movement to, the deep understanding of scheme and coverage schemes and what defenses are showing him. It's rare that you can fool Tom Brady. The most you can do is make him think for a couple of extra seconds or even half seconds. And that's when teams have had some success against him, because so much of what the Patriots offense does is predicated on post-snap adjustments and route conversions. So if you see in one coverage scheme, everybody does this. If you see in another coverage scheme, everybody does something different. Needs everybody to be on the same page. And so if as a secondary you can spin your coverage or spin your safeties at the snap and people aren't on the same page, that's when you might see some success against this offense. But there's nothing he hasn't seen before. So he's ready for everything. He knows the playbook inside and out. I mean, there's clips of him, speaking of route conversions, there was a clip from, I think it was last year, where, he's carrying out a play action fake to James White, and he tells him as he's carrying out the fake which route he's supposed to run, and then he throws it to him. He carries out the fake, and you can hear him say check down, which is this little curl route about 3 yards over the middle of the field over the football. And then when White turns around, the ball's in his hands, because that's how he sees the game. He's like a robot. And so you put it all together, the competitive toughness, the mental awareness, the pocket movement, the understated athleticism. I'm not calling him an athlete, but his ability to create space with his feet in the pocket. Like Monday night, we saw him evade a corner blitz, stay upright, throw a check down to Brandon Bolden on 3rd and long, which they almost picked up. That's what's made him so great over the years. How long it lasts, I don't know. But from covering this team for the past, 5 years of my life, and from being a fan of this team from well beyond that, when I first started covering this team back in 2014, I would get asked, how much longer do you think he has? And I keep telling people, look, we know Father Time is undefeated. We know Father Time has won against every athlete before. If there's a guy that's going to take Father Time the distance, it's Tom Brady. And I don't know what round we're in. I don't know if we're in the 8th, the 10th, the 14th, or the 15th. But he's going the distance against Father Time.
What gives Tom Brady the most trouble in terms of defensive pressure, coverages, and to follow that up, do you think that the Browns have the ability and the talent to give him those kind of pressures given the right scheme on Sunday?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question. And there are two things that have historically over time been shown to frustrate him the most. And I'll deal with the one that I think is less likely to take effect and play out on Sunday. And that's, like we were just talking about, those spun safety looks, those rolled coverages in the secondary. That's what has worked for Buffalo in the past couple of meetings between these teams. And I'll tell you guys that, after New England beat Buffalo in Week 16 last year, I remember sitting down to record by Scho, after that game, and I was like, look, Pats fans, I don't know if this passing game's good enough to win a game in the playoffs, let alone go deep into the playoffs. And I was certainly wrong about that. But the Bills secondary and their safeties and the way they're able to consistently confuse, or not, if not full on confuse, but at least make Tom Brady think for a second or two, for an offense that's so predicated on everybody being on the same page and the ball getting out on time and in rhythm and, well before anybody gets to pressure him, getting it out of his hands quickly. If he has to think for a second or so, that's going to slow it down, and that's going to throw the timing off of what they're trying to do from a passing game conceptual standpoint. And so spinning the safeties, rotating the coverages, that has worked. In watching Cleveland's defense, I'm not sure that's going to be their best way to sort of get Tom Brady off his game. I think it would more come into play with the other thing that we've seen frustrate Tom Brady, and that's quick interior pressure. When you got guys like Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon, Sheldon Richardson, you've got some players that you can move around up front. I expect this to be a heavy game with lots of tackle, end exchange stunts. You've got a backup center, Ted Karras, in there. I would imagine that Cleveland's going to throw some stunts and some loops, cross the face of him, get guys like Garrett and Vernon sort of work it to the inside, have them loop and attack the A-gaps and try to get some quick A-gap pressure on Tom Brady. I think they have a good chance of doing that. And if you do that, you're going to, again, frustrate him, throw the time and the rhythm of this offense off kilter a little bit, because we know he's not the most athletic guy. He can certainly step up in the pocket and evade edge pressure, but it's that quick interior pressure that's given him the most trouble over the years. And so I think that's where Cleveland will probably have their focus and their game plan going into this game. Try to get some A-gap pressure on him, try to frustrate him off of the snap, and move him off of his spot and throw the time and the rhythm off when it comes to Patriots and trying to throw the ball.
we talk about Belichick and Brady being the constant, but during the last 2 decades, but I would say another constant is the random cast of characters Brady has had offensively. I can think back to the first Super Bowl with J.R. Redmond in the backfield and Troy Brown as a wide receiver. Now this year, I mean, Sony Michel's not a random character. He was a top draft pick, but you got guys like Jacoby Myers, Philip Dorsett, Ryan Izzo, Matt Lacoste, now 39-year-old Benjamin Watson back in the fray. Mark, how does Tom Brady consistently make these guys look like all pros when half the NFL world hasn't even heard of them until they start making plays for New England?
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing to sort of see unfold, because you know that each year there's going to be somebody that they're going to turn into, if not a Pro Bowl type player, like at least a somewhat household name. And, like you said, you sort of ran through the list, and then there's other guys you can add to it, like, the David Pattons of the world, or the Troy Browns of the world, or even Julian Edelman in a sense. I mean, a guy that was backing up Wes Welker, had to play some defensive back at times, and even into the more recent history, like you said, with Jacoby Myers and Gunnar Olszewski. And part of it is, look, the offense itself is designed to get some favorable matchups, is designed to put players in positions to be successful. Part of it is sort of a scouting and player development and player evaluation piece where, maybe these guys aren't household names, but they're able to identify traits in players where they know that, okay, well, maybe this guy was a former quarterback. Now he's turned wide receiver, and he doesn't run great routes, or doesn't have the best footwork, but he knows the game and he has a good feel for the position. And we can turn him into, a wide receiver. And you can say that for Julian Edelman. You can say that for Jacoby Myers. And, with Benjamin Watson, there's some familiarity. Obviously, Brady and Watson played together. And so I think from a conceptual piece to a player evaluation piece, and to the fact that Tom Brady is able to, spot open receivers and put the ball where it needs to be and give guys a chance to be successful, that all adds up to opportunities for players to go out and be in the best position to be successful. And, Philip Dorsett's another example. He'd sort of seemed to be a bust, after he was drafted perhaps way too early out of Miami by Indianapolis, but he's having sort of a rebirth of his career now, and he's probably one of Brady's more trusted receivers at this point. And so, the Patriots do a great job at evaluating talent. They have some misses like all teams do, but especially at the pro level, when it's that sort of free agency scouting element, they seem to do a great job with that.
Going from one quarterback to another in Baker Mayfield, Mark, what are your thoughts about Baker so far this season? And do you think that we'll be able to see the Baker that we saw late last year? I know the schedule does get easier after we played New England, but everybody is ready to hit the panic button in regards to Baker Mayfield. Do you fall into that camp as well?
I don't think it's anywhere close to time for the panic button. But I do think that there are some things that I want to see Baker do less of, to sort of put it that way. And, when I was on with you guys, pre-draft, I was very high on Baker Mayfield. He was my QB2 in that class. But at the same time, there was an issue that I had with him. And there's that sort of idea of the conundrum of comfort and chaos, where it seemed like there were opportunities when he was at Oklahoma to make some easy reads and throws, to take what the defense was giving him. But then he would often try to make something happen where he would break the pocket, or he would, roll to his left, roll to his right, try to make something happen in a scramble drill situation. And maybe he would. And often he would. And that's part of the reason that Baker Mayfield is who he is. But when you get to the NFL, there are times when you need to sort of stay in there, play within the structure of the play, and make a read and a throw. And whether it was, the Rams game, at the end of that game when he was vacating some pockets, even, he had a throw on a 4th and 7 early against Seattle where he had Jarvis Landry open on a seam route. It was a trips look to the right, and it was open early. They had him at Tampa 2. He got behind the second-level defenders. He can make an easy read and throw from the pocket, but he doesn't pull the trigger. He bails the pocket to the right, eventually makes a scramble drill throw to Landry that goes for, I think, 29 or 27 yards, and they move the chains. And it's like, the result is great, but it's the process that's flawed. And so I want to see him do less of that. I want to see more of the Baker Mayfield we saw against Baltimore in Week 4 when he fought that urge. You saw him on 2 different examples, and I tweeted out, I think, both of them, where there's a chance where the old Baker or original Baker, shall we say, would have bailed the pocket, would have, broken the pocket and tried to make something happen, but he stayed in there. He fought in the pocket, waited for a receiver to come open, and it did, and he threw a strike to move the chains, and that's what I want to see more of. And so I think overall, I'm pleased in a sense with his development, generally speaking. Development doesn't happen overnight. It's not linear. There'll be bumps along the way. I've been impressed with how he's progressed generally, but I do want to see more of that, Baltimore Baker, so to speak, the guy we saw in that Ravens game, because I think if that's the Baker we keep getting and we get more consistent versions of that guy, this offense is going to be great. If we start seeing the guy that's going to bail from some empty pockets and from some clean pockets and consistently seek out that chaos, well, that's when you're going to run into problems. And this is going to be a tough week for him, because the Patriots and Bill Belichick, they're so great. They're so adept at, confusing young quarterbacks. We saw what they did to Sam Darnold. We saw that they've done to Josh Rosen earlier this year, in a sense, and even some more veteran guys. Josh Allen, they confused him at times. He forced some interceptions. And so you do sort of wonder if Baker's going to be the guy we saw against Baltimore or be the guy that we saw against the Rams. So I'm curious to see how that unfolds. But overall, I don't think it's time to hit the panic button yet.
How do you think that the Browns offense and Baker can exploit this Patriots defense? I know it's been tough for everybody so far this season. The Patriots are holding teams to essentially a touchdown a game. But do you see anything that the Browns could do offensively that could potentially break this Patriots defense?
Yeah, it's a tough ask. I think that if just sort of generically speaking, if you're going to have success against this Patriots defense, you're going to have guys that can beat man coverage. And look, the Browns have guys that can do that. Odell can beat man coverage. Jarvis Landry can beat man coverage. So, they check that box, so to speak. You've got to be able to sort of protect against some of the pressure looks. That might be more of a question mark, wondered about the left tackle spot and potential acquisition there and who's going to play left tackle. So that might be a concern. You have a quarterback that can make some of those tight window throws, which Baker can certainly do against tight man coverage, but also a quarterback that's willing to throw to his hot receiver or to check the ball down and to take what the defense is going to give him. And that's where the sort of question mark comes in with respect to Baker and, seeking out that chaos or playing within structure. I think from a sort of schematic standpoint, if I'm Freddie Kitchens, I'm going to come back to a lot of what we saw from Baker in college. I want to run a ton of mesh. I want a ton of mesh Y sit. I want to have some running back wheels off of that. Maybe where you've got some 12 personnel looks at times, so you get them in more of a base look. And then you've got running back wheel routes where you've got maybe Chubb or somebody else, working against an Landon Roberts or a Dante Hightower or a Kyle Van Noy. Because you won't always win consistently against the secondary. But if you're going to have some success in the passing game, I think you need to get the running backs involved and try to pick on the linebackers a little bit. I think Baker's going to have to play a clean game. He's going to have to take those hot throws. He's going to have to take those check downs at times. And you're going to have to keep him upright. And at the same time, look, Freddie Kitchens, he didn't sugarcoat it. He said, look, this isn't a normal defense you're going up against. This is the Patriots defense of 2019. They're perhaps the best that we're going to see this year. And so you're going to have to play a clean, almost perfect game to do that. The talent is there, but it's just, conceptually, it's tough to sort of piece together the perfect game plan to go up against them. But those are some of the things that I would try, if I were Freddie Kitchens.
The biggest topic has been the offensive line. It's something that me and Jack wrote about on Monday over on our website. And a new name has popped up in terms of a potential target for the Browns in acquiring left tackle Nate Solder from the New York Giants. Obviously, I wanted the Browns to sign him when Joe Thomas retired. He was available right then, and the Browns were very interested in doing so. He ended up going to New York. Why do you think that Nate has struggled so much in New York? And if he was dealt here to Cleveland, would it be an upgrade, and would he be able to get back to that player that he was when he was with New England?
Yeah, I mean, watching Nate Solder, the bit that I have this year in studying, both Eli Manning and Daniel Jones, I do cover the Giants to a certain degree. I think part of the adjustment for Solder is that from both an execution and a conceptual standpoint, like he knew what Tom Brady was going to be doing on a given play. He had sort of the belief and the knowledge that the ball was going to be out when it was supposed to be out. I think if you look back, and I know protection is also a hot topic in New York with the Giants right now. Obviously, with Daniel Jones getting sacked 8 times last week, against Arizona, a number of those sacks were on Daniel Jones, the quarterback. You look at some of the sacks early in the game, they're 1- and 3-step concepts where the ball's got to be out and he's not getting the ball out of his hands. You're going to get beat eventually as an offensive lineman. And so I think sort of his struggles in New York right now are a bit overstated. I think the sack numbers don't tell the full story. But at the same time, look, he does struggle with some moves, some pass rushing moves, like spin moves have gotten him dating back to his time in New England. And sometimes he struggles with some faster guys off the edge that can sort of run the arc. And there's also sort of, look, there's a real world component to the Nate Solder story, which is important to mention. And, his son is dealing with cancer, a severe illness, and it's a rare disease that his son is dealing with. And, the Patriots, in the Boston area, they have some great medical care where, the Solder family would take trips up every day or every Tuesday, I believe. There's a great story in the Boston Globe. Nora Princiotti wrote it a couple years ago about the Solder family. And, they have these Tuesday trips up from Foxborough to Boston for his son to get treatment. And, the Patriots, they excused Nate from every Tuesday practice session because they knew what had to be done. And during his free agency period, that was a big part of where they were looking. I know Houston was in play because of that, because of the hospitals down in the Houston area. So, there might be some real world adjustments that have taken place that maybe are weighing on him a bit. That's pure speculation. I don't know anything about that from a real world standpoint, but that is something that could also be affecting him. And so we don't know what the transition has done in that sense as well. So, but I do think that the on the field issue is a bit overstated. I think he would be an upgrade to what the Browns currently have. I still think that, if he gets a quarterback that he, sort of understands and is on the same page with, like he had with Brady, where he knows the ball is going to be coming out, it would work. Again, it gets us back into Baker and how he plays the position, but I do think that he would be an upgrade.
What do you think the cost would be for Solder? It's been speculated on social media, but since you cover the Giants too, what's your take on the compensation?
God, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't think it's going to be anything that Cleveland wouldn't be able to part with. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'd probably say a third. I can't imagine it would be more than that because we are sort of talking about a left tackle that sort of has struggled. I mean, maybe 2 day 3 picks instead. But I think it's something that Cleveland would be willing to part with, especially when, look, it's an issue. And, you've got picks to play with. So, yeah, I think the compensation piece wouldn't be too hard to figure out.
Yeah, he also has an out in his contract after this season, so it could only be kind of a trial run for the rest of the season. If it doesn't work out, it really wouldn't hurt the Browns in terms of a contract for the next couple of years if he doesn't perform well, if they decide to trade for him. Our final question to you, and it's kind of a two-parter. Do you think the Patriots are going to be able to run the table this season? I know they do have some tough games coming up with the Cowboys and Kansas City as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy. And then give us your prediction for the game on Sunday.
Yeah, and, as far as running the table, look, they have had an easy run of it up to this point. I mean, you look at the teams that they've played, the quarterbacks that they've played, it hasn't been exactly tough sledding. This is the tough part of their schedule now, because you've got these 2 games against 2 AFC North teams, Cleveland and Baltimore in back-to-back weeks, road game at Baltimore November 3rd. Baltimore is playing well right now. That's going to be a primetime game, so the atmosphere is going to be crazy there. Baltimore fans absolutely despise Tom Brady, and so that atmosphere is going to be electric. Then coming off the bye, at Philly, Dallas at home, at Houston, and then Kansas City at home. So this is the meat of their schedule, because then they finish at Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Miami at home. And so, I doubt they will go undefeated. I would always say that there's probably no way, because even if they get through the next 2 weeks and they get to the bye unbeaten 9-0, that 4-game stretch coming out with all of them either late afternoon or primetime games, that's going to be tough, especially that, back-to-back at Houston, home against Kansas City. Mahomes will be back by then. Heck, Mahomes might be back this week. So, I don't think they go undefeated. I think 14-2 or 15-1 are certainly doable. 15-1 might be where this ends up. But look, that game against Buffalo too. Buffalo's playing well, and that game might have serious playoff implications at this point. Could even be for the division because Buffalo, they've got a pretty easy schedule. And so they've got a lot of games left that are going to be tough. So I don't think they go unbeaten. But I do think they get out of Week 8 with a W. I don't think it's going to be a blowout or anything like that. But I think this is sort of maybe a 34-24, 35-23 kind of game. New England, it's a 2-score win, but it's not a blowout or anything like that. And, this game gets into the fourth quarter with, Cleveland still having a chance to pull this one out.
Well, I like your optimism because I was actually going to predict like a big blowout, like 31-10 Patriots. So, Mark, I like that you're more optimistic than I am.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's interesting, Jack, because, look, we know what this defense has done, but we know the talent that Cleveland has on the offensive side of the ball. They're coming off of their bye, so they've had some time to get ready for it. So, and this is sort of a statement game and a statement opportunity for Cleveland because obviously we know the expectations around this team coming into the season. They haven't lived up to it, so they'd love nothing more than to come out of their bye and start the second half of their season, so to speak, by punching the 7-0 Patriots and the defending Super Bowl champs in the mouth. And so I assume they're going to be ready. I know they're going to be ready. I know Baker would love nothing more than to go into New England and plant the flag, so to speak, by knocking off Tom Brady. And so I expect Cleveland to be up for this one. I think they're going to give this a game. And, look, it's any given Sunday in the NFL. Anything can happen. And so I expect this one to be close. I think New England pulls it out, but I think Cleveland's going to be ready for this one.
Yeah, when I first saw the line for this game at 13.5, I'm like, are you kidding me? It's the Browns have 2 weeks to prepare. They're coming off their bye week. The Patriots are on a short week after playing a Monday night game. 13.5 points. I was very surprised to see that, especially with all the talent that we have on offense. But it is New England. I think they're going to pull this one out as well. So it's tough for this Browns team to potentially fall to 2-5. But the easier part of the schedule is coming, and hopefully this team can really start to piece it together. And you see at least some positivity and some major steps forward this week. I think that performing well against this defense will go a long way for the confidence of Baker Mayfield and Freddie Kitchens and the rest of this offense. So hopefully they could do some things offensively that they could feel good about. But I don't think that they're going to be able to come away with a win during this game. Mark, I appreciate you coming on again. We said half hour. It's been 45 minutes. I'm sorry, but we just get into a great discussion about football, and we could probably go for 2 hours, and it wouldn't feel that long. So I appreciate you coming on. If you want to plug everything you got going on with your writing and your podcast, the floor is yours.
Thanks, gentlemen, and thanks again for having me on. Easiest way to keep up with me is on Twitter, at Mark Schofield. Check out the work like Inside the Pylon, Pro Football Weekly, Matt Waldman's Rookie Scouting Portfolio. I do work for a bunch of different SB Nation websites, Big Blue View, Bleeding Green Nation, and yes, Pat's Pulpit. We can also find the Scho Show covering the Patriots. But the easiest way is Twitter, at Mark Schofield.
All right, Mark, I appreciate it. Hopefully it's not almost 2 years that we talk again.
Hopefully not, man.
Yeah, I know it's been a while. Maybe, hopefully, we can have you back on in January when we're discussing a Browns and Patriots wildcard game, AFC Championship game, something. Hopefully, that's the next time that we'll talk.
That would be fantastic, my friends. Let's call it a date.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, Mark. And we'll be right back with the rest of our podcast in a second. I want to thank Mark. This is the second time that he's joined us. Both times he's been absolutely incredible. When you get into a real in-depth football discussion, I don't really think there's anything like it. And the information that he provided and the conversations that we were able to have about the Patriots and complimentary football, Bill Belichick, Baker Mayfield, it was just a fantastic a fantastic conversation with Mark, and hopefully you all enjoyed it. Be sure to follow him on Twitter, like you mentioned. And, Jack, as we get on out of here, is there anything else you wanted to discuss?
All that I'm going to bump up my prediction. I said 31-10 during the interview, but I'll bump it up to 31-17 because if Mark's feeling like this is going to be a close game, despite the tear the Patriots have been on, maybe I'll be a little bit more optimistic about Sunday's game. So I'll say 31-17 Patriots.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Mark. I feel optimistic, but I think the Browns will cover in this one. They are 13.5-point underdogs as of this recording. So I will say the final score will be 35-27. I think the Browns will score a late touchdown late to make it look close and cover, but I think the Patriots will ultimately win this one, as I mentioned earlier. All right, Jack. You guys can follow Jack on Twitter over at JMcCurryCLE. You can follow me on Twitter at AnthonyJokey. Be sure to follow our new website on Twitter at thedogland.com. If you go to the 1085 Gridiron Twitter page, there's a link on there to go follow the Dogland. We absolutely appreciate everybody who is listen to the podcast and now is reading the content that we're putting out. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We absolutely appreciate it. And with all that, we appreciate Mark one last time coming on, talking football with us. Hopefully the Browns can pull this one out on Sunday, but all three of us think that the Patriots will win this one. But as we get out of here, most importantly, go Browns.